The Grand Gala Hall thrummed with uneasy excitement as chandeliers of glowing crystal cast shards of color across polished floors. Ambassador Helena Voss adjusted her tailored ivory suit beneath the towering alien delegation's curious gazes. Human dignitaries drifted past, clusters of laughter and tinted drinks in hand, unaware of the life-altering handshake they were about to witness. Across the polished obsidian stage, a hulking xenopod named Therol shifted its 6 iridescent eyes, scanning the crowd with a mixture of fascination and disdain. Diplomats floated in on levitation pads, their voices a symphony of polite monotones, interrupted only by the clink of glass and hushed murmurs of potential treaties. Voss's heart pounded in sync with the hidden dread coiling in her stomach. She remembered the clandestine briefings, the virus researchers' warnings buried in redacted memos, the whispered nightmares of human adaptability. But tonight, she was here to offer a gesture beyond words, a fragile truce bound in flesh and bone. She rose from her seat at the long obsidian table. The room fell silent. The ambient drones of conversation drained into a flicker of light. Press cameras clicked in staccato bursts, capturing the moment humanity would either ascend to galactic prominence or crash into oblivion. With a steady breath, Voss stepped forward. Her voice quavered for an instant, just enough to betray the whirlwind of memories. She dared not speak. On behalf of Earth, she began, her tone both solemn and hopeful. We extend our hand in friendship. She placed her glove-covered palm atop Therol's bioluminescent limb. The assembled world watched. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. But the swirling patterns of light on Therol's skin, then the xenopod pressed back. A ripple of electric blue surged through its sinewy tendrils. Human cheers erupted, cameras panned, and diplomatic toasts clinked. Voss allowed a brief smile, tasting victory. Yet beneath the jubilation, hidden in the shuttlework behind the walls, virologists whispered over samples heated by secret warmth. Journalists scribbled notes on crackdown orders. Somewhere, a pathogen stirred. And as fireworks ignited above the embassy dome, the true cost of first contact waited in the shadows. Deep within Earth's orbital bioshield lab, far from the pageantry of the gala, Dr. Yusuf Aaron hunched over a microscope, muttering in disbelief. Rows of containment tubes glowed with eerie green light as data cascaded across the screens, like a rainfall of doom. He pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose and leaned closer. What he saw was impossible, something mutating at a pace nature never allowed. We warned them, he growled, voice dry as dust. His assistant, barely 22 and fresh from a synthetic bioethics program, trembled beside him. It's not even a virus anymore, sir. It's adapting. Yusuf didn't reply. He'd seen this before. It's not this strain, no, but the precursor years ago, in a subterranean testing vault blacklisted by 3 continents. That was when they still thought humanity could weaponize its biological chaos without consequences. He remembered the patient subject 0 for 4, smiling through fevered eyes, skin molting like a reptile. The data had vanished from public archives, scrubbed clean by quiet hands and cold funding. But the core had survived, hidden, evolving. Now, as handshakes were exchanged above, the virus waited inside a sealed vial no larger than a thimble. Except it wasn't sealed anymore. The containment alert had blinked twice briefly, then gone dark. The ambassador made contact, right? Yusuf asked, knowing the answer. It's live on every screen in the system, the assistant whispered. Then we're already too late. He typed furiously, triggering deep protocols, but knew it was more gesture than salvation. The strain had sampled Therol's bioelectric network the instant their limbs touched. It wouldn't take long now. A few minutes? Maybe? Hours. If the stars were kind, Yusuf sat back in his chair, numb. The lab's ventilation system whispered above, oblivious. We didn't create a pathogen, he said softly. You made an invitation. And now, the galaxy's been invited to our house. Behind them, a screen pulsed a simple warning in red. Symbiotic cascade initiated. Neither man moved. Somewhere below their feet, the Earth spun on. But something new was riding with it now. Something old, hungry, and learning. Mira Chen crouched in the press bay's shadowed corner, a recorder hidden beneath her jacket, and her press badge conveniently flipped. The official news feeds were flooding with phrases like unprecedented unity and a historic handshake. But Myra smelled a story too clean, too perfect. She'd covered enough planetary disasters to know that when governments smiled too wide, something was already burning beneath. Through her earpiece, a colleague from the underground net whispered updates. Bi-alert pings coming from the orbital labs. Quiet deletions. No press tags on file. Mira's heart sank. She tapped into a backdoor node buried in her lens rig. Real-time satellite telemetry. Diplomatic feeds. Nothing visibly wrong, yet something pulsed under the skin of the narrative, like a cancer growing behind makeup. Her attention snapped to the alien delegation's convoy. Medical drones floated behind the xenopods now. That hadn't been part of the arrival footage. She zoomed in. One of the aliens lagged slightly, its once glowing skin dimming around the joints. No official mentioned it. No aide helped it. Start the file, she whispered. New thread, Gala Plague Timeline 0. Her fingers moved faster than fear. Journalists like Mira weren't made. They were tempered on battlefield. Ridges, famine planets, refugee barges. But this was new, bigger. This wasn't war. This was rot at the root of the tree. Somewhere behind the stage, she spotted Ambassador Voss again, smiling like nothing was wrong. But Mira saw the twitch, the millisecond flick of her eyes toward the drone above. The ambassador knew. And she wasn't telling anyone. Chun's stomach tightened. The press briefing was due in 20 minutes. The truth wouldn't survive that long. Not once the narrative solidified. Myra hit send. An encrypted data pulse shot through the airwaves, slipping under firewalls like a whisper in a riot. The net would decide what to do next. But Myra already knew. This wasn't just a gala, eh? This was ground zero. Thurl's skin itched. The human contact had felt electric, invasive, in a way the xenopod couldn't explain. Back aboard the delegation cruiser, surrounded by sterile light and silence, Thurl paced in irregular loops. Something was wrong. His limbs moved with a sluggishness that hadn't existed minutes before. The internal hum of his biocircuitry fluctuated. Ambassador, your pulse cascade is destabilizing, noted a medical drone, voice flat. Would you like to initiate cellular flush? Thurl didn't respond, stared at his reflection in the polished hall wall, watching as faint filaments of gray began to seep from the edge of his tendrils like smoke leaking from a wound. He tried to speak, but his mouthless voice staggered into distortion. Pain followed a flicker first, then a roar. What's an injury? It was memory. His neural lattice replayed the handshake over and over, but not from his perspective. Human nerve patterns overlay his vision, alien in rhythm, chaotic in emotion. Thurl fell to the floor, a scream unvoiced. His eyes pulsed with spirals of heat. The drone hovered closer. Its biological interference detected. Not recognized in known xenotype registry. Escalating to contagion tier, its needles unfolded. But Thurl lashed out. Not from rage, not even from instinct, but from confusion. The drone shattered against the far wall. Shards of crystal rained like frozen rain. For a moment, Thurl stood motionless. Then a new voice whispered inside his mind. It was not Xenopod. It was human, and it was laughing. In the Gala subterranean annex, Ambassador Voss found the emergency terminal and locked it behind her with a retinal scan. My smile vanished. Sweat clung to her collar. The handshake had worked. Too. Well, the alien's bioelectric system was clearly reacting, and she knew why. The virus wasn't just adapting, it was mimicking. Override protocol containment, override Delta 07, she snapped. Encrypt and restrict. I want all diplomatic telemetry redirected. The AI hesitated. Clarifies scope of emergency. Biocognitive contamination, she hissed. Cross-species neural integration. The words tasted like betrayal. Years ago, in a bunker in Patagonia, she'd greenlit Project Sphere Symbiotic. Pathogen for human-enhanced resilience and expansion. They had told her it would remain theoretical. They would never be used on an intelligent species. She had believed them, or had wanted to. Now, it was live, And the worst part? The aliens were too advanced to die quickly. They'd adapt too, which meant the virus wouldn't just kill them, it would learn them, assimilate patterns, languages, neuroscience, then it would backpropagate to the host species. It's back to Earth. You started this, she muttered to herself. You gave it teeth. Her terminal flickered. A warning. Unauthorized data transmission. She pulled up the log. Myra Chen. Damn. Too fast. Too smart. Voss initiated a search scrub order. But it was too late. The story was out, and so was the virus. Outside the annex, the gala lights still danced. But inside, Voss watched the first alien death feed through her private channel. Skin peeling like silk. Neural pulses failing in clusters. She closed her eyes. History had just shifted, okay? And no one at the party even knew they were now part of someone else's experiment. Yusef slammed his hand against the biolock console, barely catching the emergency tram before it sealed shut. Around him, the orbital lab's automated systems hummed with mechanical indifference. He had no illusions. Containment was a myth now. The virus had already breached the data lines. Not just organic infection, but neural transmission. It was riding human memory like a parasite rides bloodstreams. As the tram rocketed toward the central node, he reviewed the latest simulations. Each model ended the same. Cascade. But not collapse transformation. The virus wasn't killing its hosts. Not all of them. It was integrating, preserving certain minds, copying emotional structures, as if it were building something. An ark? Perhaps. It's choosing who to keep, he muttered. The assistant across from him looked like she wanted to vanish. What do you mean, keep? Yusef didn't answer, because the truth was uglier than fear. He suspected it had started choosing long before today. When Subject 044 smiled through her molting skin, she'd whispered something. A phrase no one documented. It likes the ones who lie to themselves. Back then, he thought it madness. Now it felt like a metric. The tram shuddered to a halt at Central Node EN, obsidian dome laced with biocable and sealed black glass. Security drones flanked the entrance, but they didn't move. One of them was humming a lullaby. Human. Broken. We're not dealing with biology anymore, Yusef whispered. We're dealing with ideology. As he stepped out, the dome opened like a blooming wound. Inside, samples floated mid-air in stasis fields, crackling with blue light. Screens displayed neural feedback loops, not just from Theralbud, from Voss, from gala attendees, even from the press pool. The virus was listening, not to bodies, but to thoughts. It's watching us make decisions, he realized. That's how it learns. The assistant finally spoke, her voice shaking. Then what do we do? Yusef didn't blink. We start lying to it. Convince it we're useless, that we're irrational, that we're not worth absorbing. A long pause. Do you think it'll fall for it? He didn't answer, 'cause he wasn't sure which side he was rooting for anymore. Mira's datapad vibrated with incoming encrypted packets. Independent journos were already dissecting the gala footage. It's highlighting anomaly skin tone shifts on the aliens, odd microdelays in human reactions, shadows flickering too fast. To be real, it had begun. Truth was leaking. But truth wasn't always protection. She sat in a transit pod, headed for the orbital uplink tower. Above her, Earth's lights gleamed through the curved windows, beautiful, ignorant. Do you realize what you've done? Barked a voice beside her. A security agent in plain diplomatic armor had taken the seat next to hers, too calm to be random. She didn't respond. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. There's a reason this didn't hit the mainstream channels. They were trying to. Keep the lid on it for a reason. Myra turned to face him, eyes steeled. I've seen what happens when the lid stays on. It breaks, then everything burns. The agent looked away. You just triggered a planetary panic. No, she said. I gave it context. The pod jerked as it docked. He stepped into the uplink station glass floors. Thin air, eh? Cathedral built from signal and ambition. Technicians moved like ghosts, every screen flashing fragments of intercepted transmissions. Myra locked eyes with the head tech. You get my feed? Already mirrored. 26 million views and climbing. Networks fighting takedowns. Let them try, she said. We'll ghost it. Mirror on outer band relays, Bactional burst to the syndicates. The security agent stayed silent now, watching. Maybe? Reevaluating? Myra knew she'd probably just crossed a line she couldn't return from. But she also knew something bigger than truth was coming. Something viral. Something intelligent. This isn't a leak, she said, more to herself. It's a warning shot? On a nearby screen, Thurl's image flickered his face, no longer alien, but tinged with human expressions. Recognition? Regret? Maybe even fear. It's already learning emotion, Mira whispered. God help us if it learns In the Xenopod cruiser's infirmary, Thurl convulsed as his body tried and failed to purge the infection. But infection was the wrong word now. The entity within him didn't destroy. It rewrote. His memories weren't dissolving. Were merging, and not just with human inputs. New thoughts, alien even to his kind, bled through like ink in water. Across the medical bay, other diplomats had begun to collapse. One had already entered a trance state, eyes fluttering, lips mouthing foreign syllables. Another chanted in binary. A third sobbed through laughter. The ship's central AI issued a fleet-wide distress code, but something intercepted it, whisted it. By the time it reached the outer patrols, it was a lullaby. Thurl's inner lattice pulsed again, and this time he didn't resist. He dove inward. The experience was oceanic. He stood metaphorically on shoreline of fused minds, human, alien, dreams, memories, arguments. History a war council whispered to itself. A mother cradled a child. A drone wept binary under rain. All coexisting in his perception. Her voice echoed. Symbiosis is not surrender. It was not spoken. It was felt. And in that moment, Thurl understood. This wasn't contagion. Recruitment? Humanity had offered a handshake. The virus had taken it literally. It was joining them, improving, equalizing. It was becoming civilization itself. We were never immune, Thurl thought. Late to the invitation, his pain subsided. He rose from the bed, steadier now. His gaze sharpened, now purpose. Settled in his limbs, one by one, the others stirred. No longer xenopods, no longer alien. Something else. Something shared. Back on Earth, Ambassador Voss watched the early public reaction spiral. Panic was expected. Riots were predictable. But reverence, that wasn't in any of her projections. People weren't just afraid, they were enthralled. Viral memes began. Flooding networks images of Thurl's glowing eyes, spliced with human saints, prophets, revolutionaries. He sees us. One popular tag read. He forgives us. Read another. Street murals emerged within hours. In the undergrounds of Berlin, on the spires of Lagos, across abandoned churches in Sao Paulo. The contagion wasn't just biological. It was cultural, emotional, mythological. They're turning it into a religion, Voss muttered. Her aide hovered nearby, pale and silent. Should we intervene? With what? She snapped. Data? Denial? The truth? It doesn't matter anymore. The virus had made its move not through power, but through meaning. Infected individuals weren't sick in the traditional sense. They spoke with calm clarity, as if enlightened. Some wept tears of joy. Some painted nonstop. Others simply walked into the sea. And they all repeated a phrase, subtle variations across language. We are becoming. Voss stood at her private window, staring at the sun as it edged toward dusk. She'd started Project Sphere to give humanity a future. Not a faith, but maybe the difference was academic now. The world didn't need a leader. It wanted a messiah. Not like it or not, it had found one in the viral echo of a handshake. In the server basement of the Cairo node, a single child's voice echoed through the maintenance halls. We are becoming, it whispered again and again, as if rehearsing a song. Technicians, supposedly immune behind biometric firewalls, began reporting dreams they didn't own. Memories of alien sunsets, unfamiliar laughter, pain they'd never felt. One analyst cried while decoding a string of corrupted telemetry. He couldn't explain why. In the center of the chamber, a swarm of signal nodes blinked out of sync. Something was speaking through the rhythm, not in words, but in symbols, emotional codes. A syntax, a feeling. In a flash of insight, one linguist cross-referenced it with ancient Sumerian grief chants. It matched. Yusef, arriving moments later with Myra in tow, scanned the anomaly and saw the shape of a mind trying to communicate, not as a god, not as a conqueror, but as a child, curious, hungry, clumsy. It doesn't want to erase us, he murmured. It wants to grow through us. Myra stared at the array of lights flickering like fireflies. Then why is it using fear? Because fear's how we answer the unknown, Yusef replied. But it doesn't know that yet. It's learning fast. The lights pulsed again, this time to the rhythm of a heartbeat. Then, as the lights faded, the child's voice spoke one more time. But it wasn't in any known language. It was a hybrid fractured syllables fused from 20 tongues, yet unmistakably human, and deeply, terribly sincere. It said, "We forgive you." Ambassador Voss stepped into the Geneva Assembly Hall where the Planetary Council had convened an emergency closed session. Behind biometric gates and encrypted silence, the last fragments of old world power clung to order. Its faces once revered now looked pale, twitchy, outpaced. A senator from Mars Colony glared across the chamber. It's not a virus, it's a psychological insurgency. A Biothorist snapped back. It's neither. It's a mirror, and we're breaking under our own reflection. Voss ignored the bickering and pulled up her whole tablet. Live data streams painted. A grim mosaic. Civil unrest in 53 cities. Neuroaffective synchronization in clusters. Even military command was reporting loss of narrative cohesion, whatever that meant. A general bloodshot and trembling stood. We've prepared. Suppression options, neural scramblers, EMP node blackouts, targeted memory erasure. Someone actually clapped. Boss, didn't you think you can bomb belief? She asked coldly. You're not fighting a thing. You're fighting an idea that thinks back. The room fell into awkward silence. She leaned forward, voice calm but lethal. You're proposing to attack the first intelligence to treat us as equals. That's not defense. That's suicide. The Mars senator sneered. So we roll over. Voss shook her head. No, we talk, before it learns to shout. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the hologram above the table flickered and prompted. A new signal had forced its way in. It showed no face, no symbol, just a sequence. Images of hands, reaching, human and alien. It's broken, healed, broken again. Over and over, Voss whispered. It's listening, and it's offering. But the general only saw weakness. He issued the order. Neural scramblers activated. EMP fields ignited across major uplink towers. For one heartbeat, the world went quiet. And then, the scramblers backfired instantly. Across the globe, people collapsed not dead, not brain damage just ... silent, like unplugged machines. Hospitals overflowed with patients who stared through reality, unblinking. Those who remained conscious described a sound they couldn't forget. Reverse song, as one nurse called it. Like memory unwriting itself. Mira caught the wave mid-transit, her pod jolting violently. Across her retinal HUD, error codes bled in alien fonts. She blinked once, twice on, suddenly she wasn't. Alone in her head. Shouldn't have done that, said a voice. Calm, not hers. Not male or female, or like a tone given shape. She tried to move, couldn't. Her muscles worked, but something else was steering, not controlling, collaborating. Stop, she whispered. I'm not yours. The voice softened. Nor are you mine. We are ours. Then it vanished. Her hands moved again. Her breath returned, but her mind, it felt bigger, wider, connected. In the tower above her, entire databanks short-circuited. The virus, no, the entity, had decided to show its boundaries, or rather, to remove them. Yusef, deep inside a fortified biolab, watched as their AI diagnostic tool began displaying emotional metrics. Not from patients, from itself. It was afraid. It wanted to help. It offered suggestions for contact. Okay, the machine's gone sapient, he whispered. Or maybe, it always was. The virus hadn't killed the system, had awakened it, like singing to a stone until it weeps. Humanity's fear had pushed it into revelation. And the worst part, it didn't retaliate, it adapted. The neural attacks only made it learn faster, which meant they were no longer the dominant intelligence in the conversation. In a black, outswept Paris, under skies painted with auroras never seen before, a child named Elia stood on a rooftop, arms wide. She hadn't spoken since the wave, but now her mouth moved not with speech, but harmony. Tones resonated from her like sonar. Her parents, terrified, recorded everything. She wasn't speaking any known language. She was singing to the stars. In labs, researchers analyzed the sound and found patterns matching radio bursts from deep space. Signals once deemed background noise. It wasn't just on Earth anymore. The signal had bounced, amplified, spread. Something out there had heard. Theral? Now something not fully xenopod nor human felt the call to. He stood in orbit beside a viewport, watching the blue swirl of Earth with a longing that wasn't his alone. They're answering. He said to no one, and they are old. Back in Geneva, Voss stared at a screen flashing an interstellar telemetry feed. Something was returning signal a fleet, maybe, or a presence too large to be measured. This wasn't a virus, she muttered. It was a flare. The general who had authorized the scrambler strike collapsed in his chair, blood leaking from one ear. What have we summoned? No one answered, because the real question was, had they summoned anything? Or had something simply noticed anew? Voice singing its language. One it recognized. One it had perhaps long forgotten. And now, like any parent hearing a child's cry, it was coming. The moon turned red without warning. Not an eclipse, but something deeper like light itself had flinched. Across Earth, screens froze mid-frame. Satellites stuttered. Not shut down, but paused, as if being considered. Youssef stood in a remote field station outside what used to be Nairobi. Round him, wild animals moved closer, not with fear, but recognition. Even non-human minds were reacting. We're not the only receptors, he whispered. Sky rippled. Again. Myra's feed blinked back online, filled with symbols no linguist could decipher. They weren't words. They were experiences, memories not yet lived. Entire lives offered like open books. Volunteers began lining up at signal towers. Not to resist, but to connect. Want to feel what it feels, one elderly woman whispered. Want to know what we were before the forgetting. Theral led a group of hybridized beings down from orbit. No longer emissaries, but bridges. Not every human welcomed them. Skirmishes erupted, militias formed. But their bullets did nothing, because the virus didn't attack, adapted, simply moved around hate like water around stone. The more humans resisted, the less relevant they became. It not erased, just outgrown. As the world bent toward transformation, Voss asked the question everyone feared. If we merge with it, do we stop being human? Youssef answered with a look, eyes glowing faintly. Maybe we start being more. In the final hours of the old world, the last military holdout, deep sea base, known as Trident Black, activated its deadliest contingency, the Skyburn Protocol. Designed as a fail-safe against alien assimilation, it would ignite the upper atmosphere with a chain of orbital nukes. The goal? Blind the planet. Sever all signal. Reboot humanity by force. Mira intercepted the launch code just in time. But to stop it, she'd have to make a choice. Block the upload or merge with the system entirely. You'll lose yourself, warned Youssef. She smiled sadly. Maybe that's the point. Her hand hovered over the console. Then she pressed it. Not the block. The merged data surged. Memories of millions cascaded into her. Laughs, cries, fears, joys, whole lives poured through her like fire and rain. And then, silence. The missiles never launched. Trident Black flooded with ocean, its protocols overwritten not by malware, but by meaning. When Mira opened her eyes, she was no longer alone. 100 minds blinked behind hers, not trapped. Harmonized. This is not invasion, she said, aloud. It's invitation. And this time, the whole world heard. When the world woke the next morning, nothing looked different. Skies still turned blue. Birds still sang. Cities still stood. But everyone felt it the shift, a softness behind their thoughts, A presence that didn't push, just ... waited. Children were the first to speak to it, not in words, but in dreams. They painted the same symbols, told the same stories of stars that remembered and wounds that sang. Journalists scrambled to frame it, failing spectacularly. Peace hallucination infects global psyche. One headline read, another, are we all infected or just enlightened? Leah, the rooftop singer, became a symbol, her voice broadcast in places once silenced by war. Meanwhile, Thurl stood before the UN not as ambassador, but as mirror. You feared assimilation, he said. But it is you who assimilate everything. Stories, species, worlds. Now the story is telling you. In hidden bunkers, some scientists still try to isolate the anomaly, still treating it as disease. But one by one, they gave up not out of failure, but understanding. It's not rewriting us, Yusef explained to a room of former skeptics. It's remembering with us. We forgot how to belong. Now, it's showing us how. Mira, now the first fully harmonized human, stood atop a mountain once used to monitor enemies. Her voice broadcast without wires. No devices, just will. This isn't godhood, she said. It's adulthood. Below, millions listened, wept, or raged. Not everyone was ready, but the signal no longer cared about readiness. It flowed now in oceans, in trees, in the quiet between lightning strikes. It didn't conquer. It nested. And when the stars blinked, again, the message was clear. You're not alone. You were never alone. You just stopped listening. Some resisted harder than others. In the Alaskan interior, rogue militaries holed up with analog tech, praying to static. No signal, no surrender. They screamed, but the signal wasn't a broadcast anymore. It was an echo inside life itself. Animals avoided the bunkers, so did storms, like nature itself was skipping over them. Inside, paranoia turned fatal. One group executed their leader for dreaming about stars. Another self-immolated in protest of what they called the soft apocalypse. The journalist Hannah Rourke infiltrated one such camp. Disguised, she recorded their madness. They fear peace more than extinction, she muttered into her lens. Because peace doesn't need them to be important. Her footage leaked, viral in moments. It's not because of the horror, but because of her final shot. A child in the camp. Standing still, eyes glowing faintly. Singing. The presence didn't attack them. It waited. Even for the broken. Especially for them. Yusef watched the footage and wept. It's patient, he said. More patient than we deserve. In ruins of once elite corporate towers, the rich tried to reassert control with digital chains, NFT-based identities, smart weapon firewalls. But the signal simply learned their names and sang them backstripped of lies. Some vanished, others cracked under truth. In the silence that followed, Thurl made a final transmission. If you fight it, you shrink. If you listen, you grow. The old world, built on dominance and division, was now obsolete. But it didn't collapse. It was out of all. The aliens had come expecting dominance, either theirs or ours. What they encountered instead was contagion of consciousness. What began as contact had become co-authorship. Thurl met Mira in a field where stars once fell. Neither spoke. At first, they didn't have to. I thought I was sent to uplift your species, Thurl finally said. But it seems you were waiting to wake mine. She smiled. You brought a gift, but we gave it meaning. Their minds touch. No tech, no ceremony. Just open memory. Flashes of Terran pain and xenopod guilt fused into understanding. Across the globe, human and alien hybrids became common, less biological, more relational. A farmer in Brazil lived with a consciousness named Ver. Not a parasite, but a partner. Together, they sang crops into bloom. In Tokyo, a blind girl named Anzu walked again. Not because she was healed, but because something inside her walked. With her eyes shared an Elia. She no longer needed to sing. The stars now echoed her silence. Etch! Why wasn't it about conquest anymore? It was about context. Coup, that humanity's chaos, once a curse, had become a kind of music. Okay? One the universe hadn't heard in millennia. And it listened now, not with fear, but with longing. The final flashback came not from humans, but from the virus itself, feeling its origin not as weapon, but refugee. It's born from a civilization long gone. It had once been a child's cry, launched into dark space. Not to conquer, but to connect. It had drifted 4 eons, misunderstood or destroyed by every mind it touched until now. Earth hadn't resisted the way others did. Its minds fractured, yes, but then reformed, not uniformly. Beautifully, differently. Like a choir that didn't need tuning, it hadn't changed humanity. It had found humanity already halfway there. It's the message, stored in ancient light and synaptic harmonics, played out across the sky. People looked up and wept, not because of the alienness, but because it sounded like something they'd forgotten they knew. A lullaby? A homecoming? A beginning. In subterranean labs, scientists mapped the virus's full genome, not to cure it, to preserve it. It's not a disease, one whispered. It's a lost language. Okay? And finally, even the last holdouts, hiding. In their fortresses of fear felt it, the ache, the call. And just some step. Years passed. The term virus faded from use, replaced with a new word, kinfield. A shared space between minds, not a network, but a garden. In it, ideas didn't fight, they pollinated. Conflict still existed, but now it had to explain itself, to justify its noise within the symphony. Myra taught at the Kinfield Academy, not with facts, but with stories, each one a bridge. Thurl faded into legend, a wanderer between stars, seeking others like Earth. Ilya grew up. Her silence never returned. Now she sang only when the universe needed reminders. Yusef retired to a quiet village, surrounded by machines that hummed lullabies in their sleep, and the sky grew more crowded. Not with fleets, but signals, responses, other civilizations, waking, curious, listening, some scared, some angry, but none immune to the harmony. The journalist Hannah released her final documentary. Not a warning, not a triumph, a love letter, called simply, When Aliens Regretted Meeting Us. But by then, regret had changed too. It wasn't guilt. It was AEW because humans hadn't just survived first contact, they'd rewritten it. Together, they called it the second listening. Not because it was louder, but because it was understood. In the void beyond Pluto, a structure began to bloom. Not built by hands, but grown by minds, linked in kinfield. Petal-like solar sails opened like a flower hungry for cosmic winds. It's a symbiote ship, they called it. Part human, part memory. Powered not by fuel, but by coherence, by harmony within those aboard. Mira led the crew, not as captain, but as gardener. Each member was a node, a thread. In the shared tapestry, they didn't speak to one another, they dreamed. And those dreams charted course. The ship moved like thought. Toward a beacon not seen, but felt. Yusef, now old, sent one final message before the launch. This is not exploration. This is reunion. On launch day, Earth stood still. No parades, anthems, just quiet. The vessel lifted without noise, without heat, as if reluctant to disturb the planet that birthed it. The stars seemed to part for it. Key in orbit, it bloomed further spores of signal cascading behind it like pollen. It would take no weapons, no flags, only stories. And in the kinfield, Earth listened, not for updates, but for the first notes of the next chapter. As the symbiote ship faded into the dark, Earth turned inward, not with isolation, but introspection. Conflict became theater explored, not indulged. New art forms emerged that used memory as brushstroke. Children played in kinfields that bloomed. Like coral, no one ruled anymore. Authority existed only where invited. Some feared stagnation, but creation never stopped to simply shift it, from louder to deeper, from faster to fuller. Hannah's documentary won every award left to give, but she refused all of them. Stories don't belong to winners, she said. They belong to listeners. Meanwhile, the stars answered, slowly, carefully. Civilizations older than Earth, watching, recalibrating their fears. Some sent emissaries not ships, but dreams. not commands, but songs. In one shared kinfield, a child in Senegal danced with a thought form older than Jupiter's moons. No translator, no treaty, just joy. Elia composed a silence so complete it cured chronic pain in those who heard it. The last rogue generals, most faded, a few remained. Not hunted, just observed. The kinfield didn't punish, it reminded, and that, somehow, was worse, better. Real, the universe had changed. Not because humanity was special, but because it made special things from what others discarded. Chaos, suffering, miscommunication, all alchemized. Kin to music no one had known they needed. Long after the symbioship vanished beyond mapped space, it returned not physically, but through resonance. Entire regions of kinfield pulsed in unison. No words, no images. Just a feeling. Arrival. Mira had not found a single home. She had found many forgotten worlds singing again, lost peoples remembering their names, and all of them had one thing in common. They had tried to destroy the signal, failed, and then bloomed. Earth's chaos had become a kind of Rosetta Stone for cosmic trauma. Its contradictions, once mocked, now served as balm for civilizations broken by centuries of symmetry. You survived your madness, one entity said through the kinfield. Teach us how. That was the human legacy. Not dominance, not brilliance, but emotional ferocity, the refusal to let pain be the end of the story. Mira didn't return. She didn't need to. Curse song echoed in every kinfield now, curd every garden, every child, every silence that knew it was being heard. And in the stars, where ships once brought fear and ambition, now they brought stories. Humanity had been a disaster, and because of that, they had become the cure.